Alright guys, welcome back. So today, I'm starting with something very special for our first gun review back on the channel. We've been on a long hiatus. We started a business, and that took a lot of our time, and I did a YouTube channel for that I put some time towards, and then of course, the coronavirus, all that stuff, has made ammo hard to find, so it's been hard to do shooting or anything like that. But that didn't stop me since the last time I did a legitimate tabletop gun review from not adding to my collection. And I am actually excited about some of the things that we have coming forward for the collection. Some cool stuff that I think y'all are going to really like. I went out this past week and I did some B-roll shooting footage with about 12 of those guns. So I'm going to be trying to do a new video about once a week, and then I might do a couple little gear videos in between those. We're kind of seeing how that's going right now. But anyway, so first of all, this gun review is going to be a little different than my older ones. I'm not doing so much shooting footage on this gun, and I'll explain why in a minute. But this is going to be more like a forgotten weapons type presentation, as opposed to, some of the newer weapons that I have. And I do, y'all know I have a soft spot for antique firearms, and this definitely fits in there. So anyways, let's get started and get right into it. This is a Remington New Model Army. Now, y'all have seen my last video with my replica made by you, Birdie. And please don't mind my cat, she's being nosy over here. Daisy. Anyways, so y'all have seen my replica, that's in 45 Colt, in my previous ones. It's actually one of my highest viewed videos. I still have that gun and I absolutely love it. And I'll actually grab it here in a minute and bring it here as part of the table with the, to compare it to this. But what this is an actual, real, original New Model Army. This one was produced in 1864 based on the serial number. And both the serial number on the barrel, which is quite hard to see as it's now, almost 160 years old, and on the inside of the grip, both match for 1864. Now, something else that's really interesting about this one is it's not just a civilian gun that was actually bought. This one here has two marks that make it particularly rare. So first of all, we have the Union Army cartouche. So this gun may not have been fielded, but at the very least it was approved by the armor for the Union Army for the Civil War. And in the next one are these two stamps right here on the barrel and right here on the frame, and I'll get into those in a minute. So first of all, how I came across this gun. This gun is one of my pawn shop finds, and when I saw this thing and the price tag on it, I was ecstatic. That is an understatement. I saw this thing and it was in the pawn shop for $400, which is, I practically stole this thing. And the reason why it was so cheap is the guy at the pawn shop thought it was actually a fake replica based on these two stamps, which was the complete opposite situation. So when I got this gun, it had just the one cylinder. This is the original cylinder that came in the gun. I'm assuming this is cast iron. This may not even be the original one to the firearm itself, but this is the one that was in the gun when I purchased it. You can see it's just no sign of any kind of bluing left whatsoever. It's a little rusty. What's in it now is actually a modern steel reproduction cylinder that I got online that is for the original Remington New Model Army, and I actually antiqued it the best I can to try to match the finish, because the rest of this gun was solid and in shooting condition, so I really wanted to shoot it. And by upgrading to a steel reproduction cylinder, it makes these old antique Remingtons far safer to shoot than if I was using the old iron cylinder. Next, I've been casting these English Kerr 44 caliber lead bullets. which have been doing pretty well in this gun. And you can see they fit in the old cylinder. You can see it's pretty loose in here, so it actually is probably pretty shot out. But as you can see, the Remington Model Army takes down exactly like my replica. You drop the loading lever, pull out the cylinder pin, put it on a half cock, and the cylinder pops right out. So you can see this modern reproduction is slightly different as far as the way the cuts are made, but they are, it times perfectly, shoots perfectly. These are modern nipples that I can replace. As you can see, this English cur fits a little bit more snug inside of this one here. So these do make a really good gas seal in this cylinder, and it does fire very, very well. And I'm gonna try see if I can get a view down the barrel, but this thing actually does have some good rifling left in it. Now you're seeing the shooting footage I took that I'm gonna put back in a little later on. I have yet to figure out the point of aim for this gun, so I can't actually hit much of anything with it, which is confusing to me because I'm actually a pretty decent shot with my replica. But these sights are different. The front post is much lower than on the replica, which I'll show later. And you can hear, and it actually has quite a heavy spring still. So the spring is still perfect. The replica's reproduction cylinder does have the notches on it, so you could technically carry this safely on a full loaded cylinder, just as you could with the original. Now, let's get into one of the things that I didn't know about this gun when I found it. I knew for sure when I first saw it that it was a real original, because it is faint. You can still see all the markings on the barrel from Remington, and it does have the proof marks, prefix A, R on the barrel, RM, which I'll explain that in a minute. I believe that is it. Now, when I first got this gun, the first thing I did is I took it apart, took all the springs and everything out of it, and then I boiled it in distilled water, and that's to stop it from rusting anymore. Now, with these antique guns like this, you almost never want to refinish it. It will destroy the value of the gun. So all I did was boil it to stop any further rust from happening, but to preserve the patina, and then I oiled it, and that's how I've left it. And when I shoot it, I do clean out the barrel pretty good, and the cylinder, and it does seem to be just fine as far as working in every single way. And it's actually in relatively nice shape. It's got a nice brown patina to it. Now, let's get into why this particular one is special. So, when I first put it on layaway when I first saw it, because I recognized that it was a real original and it wasn't a replica like the pawn shop thought, and I didn't ever told them that. So it is a real original. So I put it on layaway and I started doing research. I took some pictures, and I saw, it did have the Union cartouche on it, so it was used by the Union Army. It may not have been fielded in battle, but I didn't know what these two stamps were. And I took a lot of researching. I went on every antique firearm forum I could find. I joined the Remington 1858 forum. Everywhere I looked, no one recognized what this stamp was. And what it actually is if you look, the RM actually stands for Republic of Mexico. And if you look, the stamp on top of it, which kind of looks like a flower, is actually the hat of freedom, or cap of freedom, that they used in the 1800s. It was on a lot of their money and stuff like that. So what I found with my research, I found one guy who recognized the mark, as a couple of the firearms in his collection had the stamp. And from what I understand, and I can't find anything to really back this up, is in 1865, at the end of the Civil War, both the Union Army and the now previous Confederate Army were trying to mend things over, and at the same time, Mexico was in the Second French and Mexican War with France. So the U.S. and the now past Confederacy sent roughly 3,000 men and about 3,000 firearms and a little extra firearms down to Mexico to aid Mexico against the French. And a lot of these firearms, the ones that went directly to the Mexican army as weapons for them and not for the soldiers that we sent, were inspected by the Mexican military, saw that they were safe, and they were stamped with the Republic of Mexico stamps showing their ownership. Now, I can only find a couple instances of the rough estimates of how many guns were sent. And in those estimates, it doesn't say anything specific about how many rifles or how many handguns or what type of in proportion was sent to begin with. I do know that the one guy that I was able to find that was able to identify this mark has only seen it mainly on rifles, but he does say that he supposedly knows of 4 other examples of Remington revolvers that have the stamp that would have been part of that shipment. However, he couldn't give me any kind of documentation or photo evidence of that, and apparently they're all in private collections. And after about a year and a half of still searching, I have been able to find no one who is able to provide me with any documentation or anyone who owns those other firearms. I was able to get pictures of both the rifles and the hat of the cap of freedom, which I'll probably post up a picture of that on a coin, which would be the most easy example to see what it is. And I'll try to get up close for a second so you can try to get a good look at that. The best that you can. It's hard to see because it is fairly worn. But that's about where I stand as far as the research and the sourcing of this specific firearm. I've been looking everywhere I could. I've contacted the Cody Firearms Museum and Ian over at Forgotten Weapons. I haven't gotten any responses from them. Obviously, they can't reply back to everyone who thinks they might possibly have a rare firearm or a very rare example of a firearm. But if the research that I found does end up to be true about this particular example with the stamps, then it could possibly one of only 5 or 6 known examples of Remington revolvers that both have the Republic of Mexico ownership stamps and the Union cartouches. And that gives it kind of a really neat provenance in history that it might have been part of that very small shipment to Mexico, and that this gun could have been in 2 separate wars. So I think that is very, very interesting about, the history of this particular gun. Now, if we go in and take a close look at it, it's got the original brass trigger guard on it. It does have a prefix D on the trigger guard. Now, something about the Remingtons versus the Colts in the Civil War is when Colt was making their firearms for both sides, essentially. Colt had a thing to where if there was a defect in the frame of the firearm or in the barrel, generally they would scrap the whole thing and then go ahead and they wouldn't reuse the parts, more or less, the numbers matching parts. That's why when it comes to Colt, it's a lot bigger thing for numbers matching, because numbers matching means that the gun was complete from the factory and that it was used. Now, if you got a Colt that's got numbers that don't match between the barrel and the frame, it means that usually someone after the fact, after purchase, replaced parts in it. Now, with the Remingtons, it was a little bit different. When they found a defect in the frame of the barrel, they normally just trashed the damaged part and reused the other part. So with the Remingtons, it's a lot more common to find Remingtons that don't have matching matching barrel and matching receiver, and it's not as big as a losing point in value as opposed to Colts. Now, the reason why this one does have a non-matching barrel and a non-matching receiver, however, I am fairly sure that this came from the factory in that configuration, due to the fact that it has the Republic of Mexico stamp on both the receiver and barrel. So the frame and barrel are both stamped with the Republic of Mexico, which means when this gun at least came into the possession of Mexico, it was built in this configuration. It was very uncommon for the Mexican army and military armors to replace barrels or damaged parts on the guns that they got specifically that weren't made in Mexico. It's a lot harder for them to source parts. Generally, they just threw them away. So, at least I know that this gun most likely came into the possession of Mexico in this configuration, and that it means it most likely was mismatched from the factory. Now, it could have been mismatched afterwards. The Union Army would replace parts if needed, but generally, shooting lead and black powder, the barrel would never be shot out generally. So generally, something like that wouldn't be that big of an issue. And of course, if the frame was damaged, they were more likely just to throw the gun away than to put the barrel on a new frame. So that's a little bit of, logic I look at the gun. So I know it's original from the factory as is. The only thing I can't confirm is original from the factory is the trigger guard, because it's got a prefix D, which I have to do a bit more research to see what the difference between prefix D and A is. And of course the cylinder, which there's absolutely no way to date this thing or tell if it's original. I'm pretty sure you can tell by the texture that it is in fact cast iron, not the, steel like this one here. So it's period correct, but I don't know if it's original to the gun, and there's no real way to tell if it is. As far as everything else I can tell, everything else is original to the gun, and it actually makes it a really neat piece of history. Now I'm going to go ahead and roll over that shooting footage. I've only shot about 2 cylinders out of this gun. I don't want to shoot a whole lot. However, I do want to get good enough shot with it, because I would love to take a pig or a deer with this revolver, because for all we know, this gun may have, killed in both the Civil War and the Second Mexican-French War. There's no way of knowing. I would really love to get a hold of, some experts that can maybe give me a little bit more information about the history of this, but it's kind of all for now. So I'm going to roll that shooting footage, and when we come back, I'll have my replica and my and the original here to do some comparisons. Alright, we're back. I have everything laid out. Now, I have this right here, which is a Pieta replica of an 1860 Colt. This is going to have its own video eventually, and I will go over this little bit of damage right here, and I'll explain that later on when I do the video on this. But this is actually another Pawn Stop find I got for about 250 bucks. But I just wanted to compare the size real fast. You can see the size difference. Now this is a Sheriff model, so this does have the 6-inch barrel on it, which has its own downsides. I'll explain that later on. But I just wanted to bring that out and kind of show the comparison. Now, as we can see here, we got my original and my replica. And of course, my replica is a cartridge conversion for .45 Colt, while the original is, of course, black powder, cap, and ball. Now, something I was thinking about maybe doing is maybe reloading some black powder loads for my cap and ball using these English curves that I could relatively safely load without any, special loading equipment. Using the same powder load that I use for this. However, I would have to, fill in some of the space here with wadding to do some reloads on that. That's something I've been thinking about doing. I'm not sure I'm really going to mess with it. Anyways, so as we can see on the original, the first main thing you look at when you take a look at them, besides the cartridge conversion stuff, is that front post. And as you can see, the reproduction, the replica, has a much higher front post than the original. And I believe that's because I've read that the originals were supposed to be sighted in for about 75 yards, which I'm not 100% sure if that's accurate or not, but that's what I have read. Also, another thing, if you look at it, the original, the sight post isn't dovetailed in like on my replica. I'm not sure if that is screwed in or if it was machined with the barrel. I'm not sure how the exact production of these were. A couple other little things on it. The original has a much deeper channel for the rear sight notch than the replica. I'm assuming the replica is meant to be sighted more for probably 50 yards or 20 yards as opposed to the 75 for the revolver. And like I said, I still haven't figured out the point of aim on the original yet. I really need to actually probably sit down and take some time with this, but what I would like to do is get an actual reloading press to reload the cylinder outside of the gun. That way I don't put any stress on the original loading lever. I would like to do that in order to preserve the gun as much as possible, but I still want something that is shootable. Now, of course, the reproduction, this is all made with modern metallurgy. So, in theory, now what I find interesting about these is Uberti and Pieta, by extension, they have the same building practices. When they build these guns, they generally build them on black powder frames. They're all meant to be black powder, and then some of them are converted over to the cartridge conversions, which I find rather interesting, because they say that you're only supposed to shoot cowboy loads in these, which in theory they should be able to handle quite a bit more than that. But it is what it is. I've contacted Uberti before, and they've told me that they use the exact same metal that apparently Beretta uses in their pistols. So, in theory, this should be able to handle far more than this, seeing how this gun is solid iron. Now, a lot of this is exactly the same as on the original. You can remove everything the exact same way as you can on the original. Now, I have, for shits and giggles, attempted to put my cartridge conversion into the original, and the top strap on the replica is actually a little thinner than on the original, so it doesn't fit into the original. Now, of course, I would never shoot actual cartridges out of this gun. Now, if you look, you can also see that the timing notches are quite a bit different as well. So I've tried timing this in there. I've been told that supposedly it's supposed to be interchangeable, but from everything I've seen, it isn't interchangeable in any way. Of course, it's always just a bit of a hassle to get this back in here properly. There we go. Now, I absolutely love this gun. Generally, when I go to the ranch, this is what I'm usually carrying. However, I have switched over to 2 other firearms lately that there are going to be another videos for, as far as what my main, ranch gun is. But as you can see, I now have a relatively neat pair of revolvers that look exactly the same, but have about 160 years of history between them, and just a lot of cool factor. I plan on hopefully doing a lot more with this gun in the future. Like I said, once I get the point of aim down, I would love to try to take a pig or a deer with this this pistol, and hopefully it's going to be in the video for a long time. This is one of the ones where I honestly would never get rid of this gun, because you never know when you'll ever be able to find these. These aren't going to exist forever. They're not going to be around. They're going to be private collections. They're not going to be up for sale. When I first got the gun and I was doing some searching, I actually emailed a couple appraisal websites that do buy collector firearms and antique firearms, and I was offered $2,400 by one and $3,400 from another one for the gun as is. So I'm not going to get rid of it. I do know regular examples of this. They fluctuate all over the place, but I would love to find some history as far as the Republic of Mexico stamps to see what its true value is. But we never know. I may never know anything as far as that history goes, besides the basic facts. It's stamped Republic of Mexico, and it's got Union cartouche on it, and that gives an implied history of the firearm, but nothing more past that. Anyways, I'm not sure what the next video is going to be as far as which firearm I'm going to do next, but I should have another one next week. So I'll see y'all again next time, and as always, please like and subscribe. It really helps us out. I'm trying to get up to at least 1,000 views, hopefully by the end of this year, and hopefully more than that. So I'll see y'all next time. Be sure to come over here and subscribe, and of course you have to hit the little bell, otherwise we won't show up in your notifications each time we post a new video. And check us out on Facebook and give us a like. We post all of our content there as well, as long as some pictures that we take. Speaking of Instagram, you can check us out on Instagram too. We post all of our pictures, some short clips that don't end up on YouTube, along with a little bit of funny stuff, some game recipes, and so be sure to check us out on Patreon. We could always use the support. We got a lot of cool stuff coming up, but that stuff kind of isn't cheap, so every little bit of support helps and will help us get out some good content for everyone to see.